This is Chapter 5, Section 7 Notes. Today we're going to talk about scatter plots. And a scatter plot is a graph that relates two different sets of data by displaying them as ordered pairs. Now you can have three types of scatter plots. You can have a scatter plot that has a positive correlation. That means that over time it tends to increase. Okay, that's a positive correlation. You can have one that decreases, so that would be a negative correlation. Or you could have a scatter plot that's just kind of all over the place. There's no pattern to it, and that's what we call no correlation. So problem 1 says the table shows the altitude of an airplane and temperature outside the plane. So here's the altitude and the temperature. You can see the higher you go up in the atmosphere, the colder it gets outside. Okay, so step 1 is to make a scatter plot of the data. That just means you're going to graph these points on a graph. So the hardest part about this is actually making the axes. So altitude is on the top, so that's always going to be, it's always x first, then y. If you have a table that is horizontal like this, it's always x first and then y. It works the same way horizontally, x first, then y. So my x line needs to be altitude. My y line is labeled as temperature. Now I need to find numbers, so I went by 500s for the altitude because I have to get all the way up to 5,000. For the temperature, I just went by 5s to go from 0 to 75. So then I just graphed these. 0, 59, 500, 59.2, 1,000, 61.3. Okay, so I just graphed all those points. So that's my scatter plot, just a graph of those points. Letter B. What type of relationship is shown in the scatter plot? So what's the correlation doing? Is it increasing, is it decreasing, or is there no correlation? In this case, it's decreasing, so it'll be a negative correlation. Over time it is going down. Okay. So next we're going to talk about trend lines. So trend line is a line that's drawn in the middle of a scatter plot that shows its correlation. This line is used to estimate quantities that aren't shown on the graph. So, problem number 2, make a scatter plot of the data. Draw a trend line, approximate the weight of a 7-month-old panda. So, I'm going to take, if I can show you this. So what I did was I took this table, again, x and y, and I plotted these points. So the months, the age of the panda, and the weight, okay? And all I did was graph. So 1, 2.5, 2, 7.6, 3, 12.5. So I made this scatter plot, and then all I had to do was choose 2 points that are kind of look like they're in the middle of all this data. So I chose these 2, and then I made a straight line in between. Okay. So step 1 is 2 points that look like they're in the middle. For me, I chose 2 and 7.6, 3 and 12.5. So those were my 2 points that I chose. Step 2. Use the 2 points of the equation to find the equation of the line. So the first part I had to do was use the slope. So x1, y1, x2, y2, and I plugged it into the slope form. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I got 4.9 over 1, which just gives me a slope of 4.9. So then I just selected one of these points and I wrote it as an equation. So y minus 7.6 equals 4.9 my slope, parentheses x minus 2. Okay, and this is all I had to do. Okay, I then solved for y, but I didn't need to do that part. I could have stopped here. So then, once you have an equation, whether it's in point-slope form or slope-intercept form, you just need to plug in 7 for x. So I did y equals 4.9 times 7 minus 2.2. And then I just had to solve. So if I multiplied this, 34.3 minus 2.2 would give me 32.1 pounds. So at 7 months, a panda should weigh around 32.1 pounds. Now, if I look at my graph, I can kind of see that 32.1 pounds is in between 6 months and 8 months. Okay, so I was able to use an equation to approximate how much a panda should weigh after 7 months.